Good afternoon. Welcome to another City Club Friday Forum. I'm Doug Marker, president of the City Club. Today's program is The Great Disconnect, circa 2006, How Public Confusion Impedes Political Solutions to Some of Our Biggest Problems. Our speaker today is Adam Davis of Davis, Hibbitts, and Midghall, Incorporated. I'd like to ask you to remember to turn off your cell phones and other paging devices, and I have a few announcements to make. Our program next Friday is Preserving Civil Liberties in an Age of Terror. Our guest speaker will be Stephen Shapiro, National Legal Director for the American Civil Liberties Union, and that program will be co-sponsored with the ACLU of Oregon. Other upcoming events include that this month, City Club's Citizens Read book discussion group is reading Carl Abbott's new work titled Frontiers, Past and Future, Science Fiction in the American West. The group will meet to discuss the book at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 30th at City Club Commons. The book group is free and open to the public. And remember to save the date of June 2nd. Our Friday Forum that week will feature our annual membership meeting, including election of officers, special awards, and keynote speaker Paul Bragdon. Later that day, we invite you to an afternoon after-work membership party from 5 o'clock to 7:30 at Willamette Week's new headquarters to celebrate City Club with friends, food, drink, and music. The City Club is continuing its spring membership drive, and I'd like to ask Mike Burton to say a few words about the importance of City Club membership. Mike is Vice Provost and Executive Director for Extended Studies at Portland State University, and he served for 8 years as the elected Chief Executive of Metro. And Mike has been a City Club member since 1994. Mike?
Thank you. I have known our guest speaker today probably longer than either of us want to admit. I'll tell you, he's somebody who understands numbers and has an incredible ability to take numbers and turn them into things that will be more meaningful for us. But I also know him as someone who is tremendously concerned about the condition of our society and particularly concerned about citizen engagement, because he, like myself, understands that the basis for any kind of democracy or republic is the ability and willingness of its citizens to be engaged and to be informed about what's going on. And that's an opportunity, I think, for City Club particularly to further that. When I went on the City Club board this last time, I did so with the understanding that we would have a purposeful effort to bring younger people into the City Club, that it was a good basis for starting and mentoring people up for future citizenship. And I'm very pleased that Wendy and her staff and people in the New Leaders Program have accomplished that to some great extent. Now we have a chance to further that with additional memberships. We're getting to the commencement season. As somebody at one of the universities here, I'm very aware of the fact that we're all looking for things to give as gifts for graduates. And I couldn't think of a better gift for a graduate than a membership in City Club. It gives you an opportunity to not only offer a good start for a young person getting into the civic activities that we all need to be engaged in, but then further lets you, I think, mentor those people as they are members. Now, the table I'm sitting at over here, sitting next to Gary Withers, who I've known for a number of years. He's at Concordia, and he introduced me to a volunteer at Concordia, Charles McGee, who's sitting there, who's actually a student also at Portland State. Charles is a volunteer working to try to engage some of the students, African-American black students, into education and civic engagement, and it's a fascinating program he's got, and I was very impressed with that. So what I want to ask Gary to do is if he will be able to commit to Charles that since he's a volunteer at your university, you're not even paying him to do this stuff, that you will purchase for him a membership in the City Club so that we can further have the skills of a person like that for the future. And I would like to ask each of you to do the same thing. You can think of somebody, I'm sure, a relative or a friend who will be graduating here coming up in this next month, and a membership in City Club would be a perfect gift to give someone. And then not only give them that gift, but for the future, mentor that person along so that we indeed can do the sort of things that I think will help avoid what I'm afraid Adam's going to tell us today in his speech, and that is that the public is uninformed and confused. And we don't need that. we need more people like ourselves in Charles. So they're already making out the form there for him, and I appreciate that. So please think of this as a gift and give to the City Club that way. Thank you.
Our sponsors this quarter who make broadcast of City Club possible are CH2M Hill, Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt, and West Coast Bank. Would you join me in thanking our sponsors? To our program, next Tuesday is Oregon's primary election day. I imagine that everyone in this room who is eligible will vote, and probably most have voted already, just to get the phones to stop ringing. I also imagine that just about everyone listening to our OBB broadcast will also vote next week. Because we're voters, it's usually our opinions reported in the Oregonian. Our opinions are usually used to describe the sentiment of Oregonians and to shape the response of our lawmakers. But do we speak for Oregon? Our speaker, Adam Davis, cautions that we may not. Significant segments of our population do not vote, at least reliably. Many Oregonians aren't eligible to vote for a variety of reasons. Yet that broader population helps shape Oregon's communities, schools, and commerce. For 30 years, Adam Davis and his firm, Davis, Hibbitts, and Midghall, have monitored public opinion for a variety of clients. He designed and implemented the 1992 and 2002 Oregon Values and Beliefs Survey. He also conducted opinion research to support the City of Portland budget process for 10 years. Over the course of his experience, Adam has tried to understand the deeper trends in how the people of Oregon view public issues and how they react in many ways beyond just the ballot box. Please welcome Adam Davis.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think a lot of you know my partner, Tim Hibbitts. I met Tim almost 30 years ago at PSU, and we began working together in 1977. I'm the partner who wears a tie more often. I'm also the partner with the easier last name to spell, D-A-V-I-S versus H-I-B-B-I-T-T-S, okay? It's the two T's that gets everybody. So what do Tim and I do? 3 years ago, we make Sue Midghall a partner. Easy name, yeah, right? Sue Midghall, S-U-E-M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L. No. Sue, S-U, Midghall, M-I-D-G-H-A-L-L. So listen, you have someone with an easy first name, Adam, and an easy last name, Davis. Adam Davis, I'm just happy to be here this afternoon. Everyone, you can't take the polling out of the pollster. So I would like to start off with a couple questions of all of you. And I'll help the radio audience out there, okay? Don't panic, but I want a show of hands. I want to know a little bit about the folks as I tell my focus group participants around the table. I want to get to know you. So 3 questions for all of you. First of all, show of hands, how many of you are new to the state of Oregon within the last 10 years? How many of you are new to the state of Oregon within the last 10 years? What do you think? About a third, a quarter to a third? Yeah? Okay. Very, very good. Now, how many of you are younger than 35 years old? Let me see a show of hands. Okay. Very, very good. I'd say probably about a quarter. About a quarter? Okay. And finally, how many of you are registered to vote? Let me see. Oh, my Lord. Okay, nearly everybody, if not everybody in this room. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment, all right? Another thing I often do with my focus groups, in fact, I do it with all my focus groups, is to take time at the very beginning to lay out the expectations and the ground rules for the research. And I want to do that right now with all of you. Number one, I'm not going to make any predictions about next week, everybody, okay? So get that out of your system right now. Now, number two, I'm going to focus on government and politics generally, and I'm going to focus on Oregon and not on what's going on nationally. You're going to hear me make reference to numbers, yes, but I'm also going to be talking about qualitative research findings, focus group findings. Our firm is unusual in this sense, that we do as much focus group or qualitative research as we do quantitative research or survey research. This has given us an opportunity to not only learn how people are feeling about things, but why they're feeling that way. And I want to share with you what the motivations are that underlie a lot of these attitudes we hear about in the telephone surveys we do, a lot of the online surveys we do, a lot of the quantitative research we do. Very importantly, and Mike made reference to this, I am going to be talking about the general public with you. I'm not talking about what you usually are reading about in newspapers about the public opinion. It's really not the public's opinion. What you're reading mostly about is the opinion of who? Voters, and in most cases, motivated voters. 3 out of 4 of the last 4 elections are what you're reading about. And if you want to work out the math, you're talking really about 50% or less of the general population. That's what you're hearing about in these newspaper articles. So I want to share with you how the general public is feeling about issues these days. I want us to concentrate on the bell, on that bell-shaped curve. So many of us hear from the shrill ends of that opinion spectrum. I want to spend some time with you this afternoon talking about the bell on the bell-shaped curve. I'd like to share with you specifically my take on the general public opinion climate, which I contend there is a large disconnect between business and community leaders and the general public. And that disconnect concerns awareness and knowledge levels, which we're going to look at. It concerns core values and beliefs. And finally, it concerns some key issues. And finally, everyone, the final ground rule, no projectiles, okay? I'm only the messenger. Now, many of you have heard about the perfect storm. Sebastian Junger, in his great book, wrote about it. It was a movie that starred George Clooney. You remember The Perfect Storm. It's about 5 conditions that came together, 2 low pressures, warm air coming up from the south, cold air coming down from the north, and moisture being fed by the Gulf Stream. It all came together over the North Atlantic to form what is called the storm of the century. Lives were lost, and there were billions of dollars of damages. What I contend is that we have 5 conditions coming together, and they have formed the perfect storm of public opinion in the state of Oregon, and I want to share with you what those 5 conditions are. And let's start off with condition number 1, public cynicism, negativism, and skepticism about government. So here it comes, Mike. I'm going to really lay it on here and share with you why I think we are in the middle of a perfect storm of public opinion. As far as negativism, cynicism, and skepticism, I say we are seeing the highest levels in 30 years of doing quantitative and qualitative research in Oregon. Government is at the bottom of the list when we ask people about credibility and trust. Right down there with politicians, everyone. Politicians, government. We used to see some differences between level of government. We used to see people feeling more positive about local government than they did state, and state feeling more positive about state government than national. We're not seeing that spread like we used to anymore. It's all lumped together, and it has sunk right down to the bottom of the list of institutions that are respected institutions that people have trust in. Less than 20% of the general public will rate any level of government as doing a very good job. Why? Waste, sure. Inefficiency, sure. Malfeasance, sure. You know this. But there's something else too. What we hear a lot about is they're just not getting the job done. We hear words like infighting. The Multnomah County Commission is often brought up in focus group discussions that we have. We hear about the Oregon legislature, Democrats and Republicans fighting like cats and dogs. So it's waste, it's inefficiency, it's these kinds of things, but it's also great frustration that things are just not getting done. What this is resulting in my opinion, is lower and lower voter turnout and tuning out government and politics altogether. It's fueled every day by headlines in the paper. Let me read you some of those headlines. Ward, Weaver, Pond, Gaddis. Workers put on leave over handling abuse reports. Use of county cars revs debate. Outlaws go free, warrants pile up. Stink still rises in city sewer deal. Dirty dealings mar clean money law. Few watched over city's till as it was emptied. Police chief's judgment is now on trial. And finally, my favorite, the city that isn't quite working. Over and over and over again, people are being exposed to this. It's having an impact on their attitudes towards government. Condition number one, again, is this negativism, cynicism, and skepticism about government. Condition number two, decreasing awareness and knowledge levels about government. Awareness and knowledge levels about the ABCs of government and how the public sector contributes to our quality of life is at a very low level and getting lower. Listen to this, everybody. About 30% of the general public cannot name a single tax that is used to help pay for public services. Think about that for a moment. They can't name property tax. They can't name income tax. They can't even name sales tax. Let's give them credit that they may have moved up from California, okay? Or down from Washington. No, they do not know how our public services are paid for. Oregonians feel the state spends too much on other services that aren't as important as education, public safety, health care, and services to seniors. But 70% can't tell you what percentage of the state budget goes to those services, and those who offer up a percentage come in at an average of 32%. 32%. In fact, education, public safety, health care, and senior services make up over 90% of the state's general fund budget, leaving little money to cut in other areas. How about Politics 101? Another question for all of you. How many of you either know personally or know someone who knows personally are U.S. senators, one or the other? Let me see a show of hands. Okay, that's right off the bat a good 2/3. Let me add to that. How many of you have mailed something to the office, called the office, participated in any way in the campaign, or, again, knows this person personally or someone who does? Let me see a show of hands. Nearly all of you. Are you ready for this one? 43% of Oregonians do not know that Oregon has 2 U.S. senators. Okay, they don't even know we have 2 U.S. senators. Now, let's say, well, can you name the 2 U.S. senators? So then you got to roll into people who don't even know we have 2 U.S. senators, and we have 74% of the people who cannot name our 2 U.S. senators. The other big part of this is the fact that many do not associate government services with the quality of life they have in their communities. I'll never forget a focus group I did where I asked a question, can you name some government services that contribute to the quality of life you have in your neighborhood? And a good moderator, you know, I did the silent probe. You know, a lot of you know what that is. I fight the temptation to prompt them or to speak up, to make them even feel comfortable. Silence. More silence. I finally had it. I gave up. I said, oh, come on. What about police? Oh, yeah, police. More silence. Well, what about fire? Oh, yes, fire. And emergency, medical. Anything else? No. Meanwhile, I have clients behind the one-way mirror that are literally about ready to jump through the class into the focus group and start strangling people. But no, this gets to the point that we have not only the ABCs of how government works, everybody, but just an appreciation for what government means to our quality of life that we enjoy in this state. I often am asked by clients, we want to know how people feel about the quality of service we provide. And I look at them and I say, you know, I think we need to ask something else, and that's if they know you're even providing it. Okay? I mean, there's a great deal of confusion over which level of government is even providing these services. I see very little indication that this is going to change. Why? Because where are they learning it? Are they learning it in the schools? No. Are they learning it at home around the dinner table? No. Are they learning it from politicians? No. If anything, politicians are taking advantage of this ignorance and making it worse. Candidate after candidate is making promises about it all being about waste and inefficiency. They cater to this low awareness and knowledge levels. Then they get into office and what? They can't deliver on the promises they made to these people because of what? The realities of the public finance system. So what's the result? Expectations are not met, right? And public opinion continues to sour, so they're just feeding it. So that's condition number 2, awareness and knowledge level. Number 3, increasing anxiety about personal economic security. This is important. Both quantitatively and qualitatively, Tim, Sue, and I are hearing more and more about the future relative to personal economic security. A big part of this is the sandwich generation. A lot of us are dealing with having to be concerned financially with our children, and in some cases our grandchildren, and our parents, and in some cases our grandparents. The crunch is on this generation. A lot of you in this room are experiencing that. But there are other serious concerns, including, most importantly, the rising costs of health care. 2/3 of the general population feels that major change needs to be made to the healthcare system in this nation. But we have just been seeing the concern about healthcare costs going up and up and up in our work. We also hear about not having enough money for retirement. Add to this the rising cost of fuel, not only for our automobiles, but to heat our homes. Bottom line, more people than ever before, everybody, are telling us that they want to vote for a tax to support something that they care very, very, very much about, but they just can't because of the economic realities they're dealing with. So that's condition number 3 of the perfect storm of public opinion. So, 2 more to go. Condition number 4, widening institutional negativity. We talked before about the beating that the public sector, government specifically, is taking in terms of favorability ratings. For so long, we have heard about needing to turn to corporate America for leadership. And what we need to do is run government more like a business. We're not hearing as much about that any longer, everybody. $400 million executive retirement packages, tax evasion, fraud, and other illegal activities from Wall Street to the corporate headquarters here in Portland has just sunk large business in terms of favorability ratings and credibility with the public. Well, what about the media? Is that a credible source with the public? No. There are actually very few sources even left that enjoy any credibility with the public, which again adds to this climate that we have in this state and in this city. And finally, what is the fifth element of this perfect storm? This is values disconnect. That's what I call it, values disconnect. The disconnect between a lot of people like all of you out there, a lot of you are community leaders and business leaders, and the bell on the bell-shaped curve. We all feel very strongly about certain things, including civic involvement, family, career and job opportunity, and religion and spirituality. But what we see in the research we do are differences in the emphasis and the weighting given these by business and community leaders and the general public. The leaders tend to place more importance on what? Career and job opportunity and civic involvement. While the general public tends to place more emphasis on what then? Family and religion and spirituality. Friends, the Republicans figured that out a lot sooner than the Democrats, if the Democrats have even figured it out now. So what, you might ask? It comes down to communications, everybody. These two groups, very important to the health of a community, are not doing a very good job communicating with each other. We talked about disconnect. Well, one form of disconnect is that low awareness and knowledge level. That's one disconnect. The other disconnect, in my opinion, is this different emphasis in core values and beliefs. So there you have it. The perfect storm in public opinion. These are all public opinion related, and this doesn't even include demographic changes and economic changes that are having and will continue to have a tremendous impact on our state, region, and city, including the future of government and politics in our state. I want to talk about some issues now. What do Tim, Sue, and I hear from the bell on that bell-shaped curve? Examples of other disconnects. For example, you would think by looking at the newspaper and by listening to groups of business and community leaders talking that it's all about education. That is the most important issue that we need to do something about. Friends, education is not on the radar screens of many, many Oregonians. There is no one single issue that enjoys majority support as the issue that Oregonians want to see something done about. Many Oregonians would say that rising healthcare costs or the economy or population growth, these issues are the most important things we should be moving forward on. So again, some disconnect. And I'm not saying all business and community leaders, but I'm saying a majority of them versus where the bell is on the bell-shaped curve. You want to hear another one? Population growth. Fascinating. I go to meetings involving community and business leaders, and I hear about the importance of population growth. We need people to fuel the economy, and the economy needs people, and everything will be great if we can grow our economy, but we can't grow our economy without population growth. I can tell you right now that Oregonians see population growth coming. There's no doubt about it. They see it coming, but they don't like it. They don't like it at all. And when you do your trends work, you see ratings of very undesirable given to population growth, but ask them the specific question, do you need population growth to have a healthy economy? No, you don't. And you're looking at 2/3 of Oregonians telling you that. And how about what is needed to improve the business climate? This is a classic. You know what we need to do to improve the business climate, says one part of this equation. Many business and many community leaders. What we need to do is cut taxes, and we need to roll back those regulations, okay? Those environmental regulations. You ask Oregonians what they think needs to be done to improve the economy in this state, and it's very, very clear. You invest in education, and you invest in health care. If you want to turn this state around, if you want to have a place that's attractive to bring, that will bring businesses to the state of Oregon, you do that. You continue to protect our environment, which is why we moved here and what we value about Oregon. And as far as taxes are concerned, listen, everyone would like to have reduced taxes, but I think you would be surprised at how realistic Oregonians are. It's an issue we might want to cover later as it relates to waste and inefficiency and what the threshold is for more taxes. But I think you see in the public opinion climate that I'm kind of outlining to you how difficult an issue that is. What about schools and wasteful administration? I hear so many people concentrating on that being the issue, the amount of money that is being spent on administrators. If we just get on top of that issue, we can turn the public around and they'll be willing to vote for any tax increase for schools. Wrong. When they are talking about waste and inefficiency, and this is the value of doing focus group research, they're talking about other things as well. And one thing that I think is being missed a lot in the discussion is the curriculum. You have a lot of folks that are not very happy with what is included in the curriculum, but what I would say is more of the case, what is not included in the curriculum. And I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers possibly with this group, but what we hear about over and over again is a lack of values-based education. I'm the messenger, everyone. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. What these Oregonians are wanting more of in our public schools is something that will result in students who graduate, who have a good work ethic, and have a greater level of civility. Finally, party affiliation. It's always about Democrats and Republicans, Republicans and Democrats. And we quickly tell you that as far as the public is concerned, they're all bums. They're all bums. And the quickest, the clearest example of that is how quickly the registration of independents is increasing. Party affiliation is at the lowest we've seen in 30 years. The influence of daily newspapers. All of you live and die by what's printed in the Oregonian every day. Let me tell you, fewer and fewer people are reading daily newspapers, everybody. That makes the challenge of communications that much more difficult. But cool it, okay, on the Oregonian and on these daily newspapers. We might have an opportunity to talk a little later about, well, what are the ways you communicate with the public today? But I just want you to again, take into consideration this disconnect, the emphasis that a lot of you put on the daily newspaper and reading it and where the general public is. And finally, and I want to end on this one because I think it's one of the most serious issues or one of the most serious examples of this disconnect, and that is how so many people, so many community and business leaders are missing this meth problem that we are having as a state, this drug problem. We ran, and we validated this. The meth problem, for the first time, has eclipsed education as a problem, everybody, in this state. Think about that for a moment. This is an issue that I think a lot of people that are fortunate enough to have a good education to have jobs, have a good household income, who live in a city like Portland, don't understand. This is a problem that is out there in so many corners of Oregon, and it's just ripping households and communities apart, and the ripple effect is incredible. So I just wanted to share with you another example of disconnect. While we're all running around chasing our tails about education, again, there are other issues that are of concern to Oregonians and that they feel very strongly about. Political institutional change, I want to just quickly share with you, what I'm left feeling after all this. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? I think what I would suggest that this public opinion climate leaves us with is this: we cannot continue to do business as usual. People say that it takes a crisis to bring about change. Arguably, this perfect storm of public opinion is part of that crisis. Is it all bad news? Is there anything hopeful in what we're hearing? I would argue that my glass over there, which should be just a little further down, is actually half full, everybody. I'd like to offer up some beacons of hope so we don't leave here feeling too bummed out. Number one, here's why I'm feeling optimistic. They're coming. Who's coming? The seniors are coming, everybody, or the soon-to-be seniors are coming. They're going to come by the thousands, and they're going to be interested in re-engaging in the community. They're going to be interested in making contributions in the classrooms. They're going to be interested in making contributions in time and money to nonprofit organizations. This is a terrific asset. What we need to do as a community is have the mechanisms ready to accommodate these people. Number two, the nonprofit sector has answered former Governor Neil Goldschmidt's call. I mentioned his name, everybody, okay? In a positive way, okay? He challenged the nonprofit sector a few years back to step up and play more of a leadership role. And they have answered that call through efforts like the Foundations for Better Oregon, consisting of the Meyer, Collins, Ford, Geldwin, and Oregon Community Foundation. These foundations are setting an example actually nationwide. States are coming here to see what this group of foundations, who are very different, have different values and beliefs, but who believe enough in the future of this state to put those aside, come together, and try to provide some of this leadership that, for the reasons we've reviewed, the government can't provide. Another project related to that is Oregon Involved. Take a look at that. An effort that's going to start next week to make it possible and easier for more and more Oregonians to be involved in nonprofit activities. Addressing the awareness and knowledge level issues through projects like Chalkboard's Open Books Project. Have any of you heard of Chalkboard's Open Books Project? Anyone around here? Well, that's good. Okay, very good, actually. Maybe about a quarter of you. It's a fantastic project. It is something that will allow Oregonians to go to the websites of their school districts to find out how their tax money is being spent. And they'll be able to compare how it's being spent in that school district with other similar school districts. And another great example is the Kids Balancing Budget Project, put together by Citizens for Oregon's Future, an outstanding project of taking those kinds of exercises back to the schools and exposing students to that kind of information. I like what I'm seeing in terms of experimentation with alternative delivery models for public services, including financing. A couple that come to mind for me are the charter school experiments that are being done within the public schools arena. I also like what I'm hearing about tolling. You know, we were picking up 4 or 5 years ago on the potential that tolling represented. And we were telling clients at the time that, considering your options, friends, you know, you better wake up and smell the coffee here. And when I see that all of a sudden there's some consideration of some of these other options for paying for public services, for delivering public services, I'm encouraged. Government's trying harder and harder to be more efficient and responsive. I'm seeing more e-government, everyone, electronic government. And what I am encouraged by is that it's not just informational, but it's transactional as well. The government, the public sector has been so slow in taking advantage of the technology. We could talk about the reasons all you want, but the truth of the matter is they are way behind. And I think the work that PSU and George Beard are doing in this area is very important and needs to be encouraged. Political institutional change, another reason to be somewhat optimistic, is the open primary. I think that's a very important initiative, and I hope it enjoys your support. And I think the work that the Public Commission on the Oregon Legislature is doing is very important as well, and I like to hear about concepts like the nonpartisan legislature and annual and shorter sessions. And more folks, yes, and more folks in the public sector are beginning to question the old ways of doing public involvement. Oh, Lord, if we could have all the money back for some of this wasted public involvement effort, we'd be doing much better off as a community and a state. And the final thing that just makes me very happy to hear is memberships in the City Club, Mike. That's the key, everyone. Talk to your children, talk to your grandchildren, talk to graduates, get them to sign up for an organization like this, and it's going to make a difference. And spend time with your children and your grandchildren and your nephews and the nieces and talk about some of these things. Talk about the public sector, how government services are financed, how they contribute to our quality of life here in Portland, the wonderful quality of life we have here in the state of Oregon. And I think more and more people are doing that. So I'm encouraged, everyone. So that concludes my remarks. I wanted to just let you know that I'd be happy to respond to questions. I don't guarantee that I'll have the answers, but I'm looking forward to them. Thank you very much.
And we'll now open the floor to questions. Questions are a privilege for City Club members only, and please limit your questions to 30 seconds. Our first question will come from our board host, Chris Smith. Chris is a lead internet technologist for the Xerox Office Group. He's been a City Club member since 1991. He chaired our Measure 6 ballot measure study in 2000 and is past chair of our Advocacy and Awareness Board. Chris?
Well, Adam, there's a lot of potential for questions in what you had to say today. I'm going to focus in on one area. At City Club, we call the place where we meet the commons, because what we're all about really is emphasizing what we have together in common. And I think at City Club, we probably still hold the belief that the government is us, government is not them. But I see increasing, and in what you talked about today, increasingly the picture that we're not citizens anymore, we're consumers of government services. And the increasing privatization of things that in the past have been part of the commons. You mentioned tolling. You know, I happen to think that tolling is a great way to pay for roads, if only because it discourages the use of those roads some of the time. But the project where tolling is being considered first in Oregon, the Newburgh-Dundee bypass, the mechanism is to have a private company build and own that road, not for that road to be part of the commons, but to be a private asset that that company will charge for. So my question is, does the commons still exist? Are we citizens, or are we going in a different direction?
Well, that's a good one to start off with. The short answer is that I don't think we have any choice but to look at some of these options when it comes to the delivery of certain public services. The climate, again, is such that we've got to recognize that we need to change how we think about government and how specifically we think about the delivery of government services. I'm not saying that all government services should be privatized, but what I am saying that I think there are certain government services that are worth putting on the table and looking at and saying, can they not perhaps be delivered better by the private sector, being monitored by the public sector in some capacity? I just don't see us having a choice, friends, and I'm afraid that there are certain things in that storm of public opinion that I mentioned to you that may be irreversible. There are just too many things that have come together and are interconnected that makes going back to the old way of doing business not the thing to do. So who's up next? These intimidating lines here on both sides here. Do we alternate?
Yeah, go back and forth.
Go ahead.
I'm going to wait on bicycles.
Okay. Ray Polani, a City Club member. First of all, I want to thank you, and thank you. Second thing, I want to remind us about Chinese writing. I understand that there are Chinese characters that mean crisis similar to opportunity. And I think this is very important. Crisis really is an opportunity. And now to the great disconnect. What about the great disconnect in transportation? What about the great disconnect between public transportation and quality of life?
You knew that I thought a question like that would be asked, so I have an answer. You know, you're absolutely right. This is one of those areas where we are seeing a lot of change. And what we have seen within the last couple of years is actually a growing level of support for investment in public transit versus highways. And let me share with you, everyone, again, this, as you know, can ruffle some feathers, but I want to tell you why. This is the underlying motivations, and I think a lot of you will appreciate this, and it would make sense. Number one, a lot of people are moving here to this area who come from areas where there was a lot of money spent on highways. And they've come to the realization that we can't build our way out of these traffic congestion problems. So they're scratching their heads saying, we've got to think about this differently. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe we got to take this dollar and divide it differently. The other thing that we are picking up on is this. With the increasing price of gas, people are really re-examining this whole investment issue when it comes to what we put our money in for transportation. And more people are coming to the conclusion that they want to put more money into public transit. Now, I don't want to mislead everybody. They're still looking for a mix. They still want a balanced system. They want highways, they want public transit, and they want good communities, sidewalks, and those kinds of things as well. But what we're seeing in our research right now is actually more support for more money going into transportation.
Public transportation and
Public
money.
transportation,
it needs
absolutely.
money, but it needs money and oversight. It needs money and oversight. Thank you.
My name is Gavin White. I'm a City Club member. I'm also the chair of the Multnomah Democrats. I spend an incredible amount of time thinking about the issues you've raised today. And so I thank you very much for coming to speak to us about them. In particular, it seems to me that communication is absolutely necessary to the consensus that legitimizes government and thus to democracy. I wonder, are peer-to-peer networks and neighbor-to-neighbor organizing suitable solutions to our crisis in communication?
Are they solutions to the crises in communications?
Yes, with so much distrust of the media, how can we connect with the public? And do you think that, for example, peer-to-peer networks and neighbor-to-neighbor organizing are suitable solutions?
Oh, absolutely. I think those are two solutions. Let me just address this issue of communications very quickly. The days of people coming to you or to public hearings, to public forums, they're over with, okay? You've got to go to the people. And you've got to go to where they work. You've got to go, quite honestly, to where they pray. And you've got to go to where they learn. If you want to connect to people, you look to the schools, you look to the colleges and the universities, you look to businesses, and trying to get in there and forge partnerships with the business community to be able to have an opportunity to sit down with employees. And I think you would be surprised how many faith-based organizations are waiting to become part of this effort to improve this wonderful state of ours. I think of the fine project that Mike made reference to at Concordia, and the work they're doing in the black community in Portland. It's outstanding. But they're going to where? They're going to the churches in North Portland to talk about parenting and what can be done to help with that very important issue related to education. As far as spokespersons are concerned, remember, our list is very, very limited these days because it's not only message, it's messenger. Who are the effective messengers these days? Number one, nonprofit organizations are at the top of the list. And along with that, and somewhat related to nonprofit organizations, are institutions of learning. But there's a third group, everyone, and I want to make sure I mention this because it's often forgotten, and this distinction is not drawn. Small business, everybody, small business. Oregonians make it very clear that they think of large businesses and small businesses as different. And small businesses, on the other hand, are near the top of the list in terms of credibility. So you do have some options out there as to how to connect with people. The only warning I would give you is don't catch yourself talking with each other. That's what just drives me up the wall about these blogs. What drives me up the wall about a lot of these neighborhood meetings, it's the same group getting together, talking the same issues, coming to the same conclusions, and going nowhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ted Kay, City Club member. I have a sales tax question. Don Clark used to say that Oregonians had a genetic marker against a sales tax. I was going to ask you what you thought the odds of Oregonians voting in a sales tax were. Given your comments, I think I can guess. So let me change the question to a glass half full. What would have to change among your 5 items or in the state of the state for Oregonians to vote in a sales tax?
I like that. That is a new way of asking the question, everyone. The sales tax. What would have to change to possibly increase the chances from 0 to 10%? Somehow
I'm
you
looking
would,
for 100%.
Somehow you would have to convince Oregonians that we're not doing business as usual in this state anymore, that we are getting better value out of every dollar we spend on public services, that we've done a good job on waste and efficiency. Somehow you have to have evidence that that has actually occurred, and number 2, somehow have communicated it to a majority of voters. Friends, that is incredibly difficult. A lot of you do know how much time and how much money and how the stars would have to be aligned to make that come about. So I am actually more pessimistic about this than my partner, and that may surprise a lot of you. But I think we do agree on this issue that we're not there right now. Oregonians have to see, again, that we've made progress on this waste and inefficiency issue. Any campaign, a campaign that's just barely a campaign that would come out and engage the voters in waste and inefficiency would sink any effort at this time to pass the sales tax. Okay?
Steve Shell, member. Adam, I enjoyed your talk, but I'd like to ask you a kind of technical question, or partly technical question, about focus groups. George Lakoff has talked extensively about framing of issues. You mentioned quality of life as being very important in terms of the general public's concern. For me, at least, the land use system has been a bulwark of protection of our quality of life in Oregon. And yet ballot measure 37 is in the process of destroying the land use system. There was extensive work at focus groups prior to the election on ballot measure 37. And the people who opposed ballot measure 37 based their campaign on focus groups. It seemed to me that there was no adequate framing coming out of those focus groups. Why did that fail?
Steve, very good question, and I appreciate this opportunity to kind of address the value of these different research methodologies. The real value of focus group research, everyone, is to provide elaboration on the findings from surveys, on quantitative findings, or to help in the development of instruments that you use in survey research. I would be very reluctant. In fact, you should never make decisions based on focus groups. You cannot take the opinions of 8 to 12 people seated around the table who have just spent 2 hours beating up a topic and project that across the entire population of voters or the entire general population. Now, yes, you can do a number of focus groups and hope that you're getting that validation, that group-to-group validation. And you can start putting some quantitative boundaries around it, and you might be able to make some conclusions that are quantitative but very, very, you have to be careful. So I'm disappointed to hear that happened, Steve, quite honestly. I think that focus groups are very good, again, in terms of testing how people react to certain kinds of communications concepts. But to base an entire campaign on focus group findings without, again, testing it quantitatively, I think is dangerous. I'd like to address the concern about 37, though. Because I think, and I want to make it very clear, that I do not believe that the vote on ballot measure 37, for ballot 37, is a rejection of the environmental ethic in Oregon. I guarantee all of you in this room that Oregonians feel as strongly about growth management and about the values of our state's natural beauty and our environmental quality as strongly about those things today as they did before ballot measure 37. I contend that the vote on 37 was not a vote on land use planning. In fact, prior to that vote, Steve, you could help me here, we had other opportunities to thumbs up or thumbs down. 3 opportunities on land use planning. Well, they were votes on land use planning, weren't they? And what happened? Oregonians said, no, we need to tweak these. There may be some changes that need to be made. But that vote, everyone, was about property rights and fair compensation for the taking of property. And that principle, without having the time, again, to communicate with the public that has low awareness and low knowledge on these issues, it was almost a slam dunk the day that ballot title was approved. And that's the problem. I don't think there would have been anything that could have been done honestly without a lot of money and involving a lot of education that could have turned around that vote. Everyone, fairness, equity trumps the land use planning system in this state in the simple terms as it was expressed in that ballot measure. Sorry, Steve.
Xander Patterson, City Club member. I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of people over the last year in the capacity of a candidate running for county commissioner. And I've discovered a really monumental disconnect that you kind of alluded to. Whereas I found our fellow citizens to be far more engaged and responsible and competent, I think, as citizens than perhaps you've described in my experience going door to door and talking to a lot of people. I found a tremendous cynicism among our kind of liberal elite, in Rush Limbaugh's terms, specifically with regards to the issue of taxes, where the conventional wisdom is that it's just simply not possible to raise the issue in any other context besides cutting them. Whereas I found that I've been able to talk to citizens about it in a very detailed manner, very candidly, and framing it in the terms of fair taxes and offering a progressive solution. Am I disconnected here, or is it possible for us to actually engage the issue and have a responsible conversation about this?
Short answer, no, it's not. Let me again revisit the storm that I tried to describe here. If you move to a vote on increasing taxes, you are dealing again with this issue of unawareness, okay, low knowledge levels. You're dealing with this issue of personal economic security. You're dealing with a perception that there's incredible waste and inefficiency still in government. All you have to do is hit that bell and ring all that, and tax increases are dead on arrival. To pass taxes these days, the stars have to be aligned. And it's very, very difficult. And also, as you go door to door with people, again, you're probably looking for people that are likely voters, people that are going to be important to your candidate or your particular ballot measure. And again, they represent a decreasingly small percentage of the general public.
I hope we find you wrong on Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank our speaker, Adam Davis, and we're adjourned.
Oh, yeah.